Holy shit. You know, there's so many contributors to these establishment media outlets that just fail people on so many levels in so many ways. And I can't help. Well, that's why I make the videos that I do. It's just to point this stuff out to you so that you can understand. If you don't already, right? If you're new to the game, if you just don't understand politics and philosophy and all this divisive political, all this divisive identity politics is... Now, this is a headline from The Independent. And I mean, think about it. It's called The Independent. It should be fucking independent. But there, as we're seeing time and time again, there's nothing even remotely honest about even the name of the very publication, right? Far-right commentator gets schooled by historian over George Orwell and Antifa. That's a headline from this article, right? Nothing fucking objective. It's political posturing and picking sides already just in the headline alone. Subportion is, Orwell signed up to fight with the militia of a Spanish Marxist party via the ILP. That's how much he despised fascists, says historian. So whether you... Okay, first of all, if you pay attention to anything that Orwell talks about or espouses in any of his novels, right, his many, many novels, is he's completely against collectivism entirely. So whether he used or chose to join a particular militia to oppose oppressors at the time, the man, he didn't live in one day, in one moment. You know, just pay attention to what he talks about. It's rejective of any collective ideology. So it wasn't just against the fascists. He rejected the fucking very Marxist ideology that they're trying to put forth and present. You know, people have been naive. I've been naive. We've all been naive at certain times in our life when we're trying to learn, right? When we're learning, it's like, who should we reject? Especially when you're talking about politics or ideologies, is, you know, once you've been told one particular faction is bad, yeah, you might go against that, but you might very well learn after that, that this other faction may very well be just as bad, right? And reject that completely, which is where Orwell ultimately ended up with at the end of his life, towards the end of his career. When you read the culmination of the literature and the books he wrote, you understand he's intrinsically and instinctively against forced subjugation and forced collectivism, right? But they try to put forth that what are you trying to create here, Independent? What kind of narrative are you trying to put forth? That he was a fucking Marxist? That he was more of a communist? Because all we have to do is get down to, but see, this is the thing. This is how underhanded they do. Because they know most people won't read this stuff, right? But let me just get down here so I can do it for you, because I do. I don't shortcut anything. I take the time out so that I'm well informed, so that when I put forth my own message and my own narratives in my videos, that you know that I'm not shortcutting in any way. I'm making sure to point out the glaring hypocrisies and bullshit put forth and espoused by anyone, no matter what side of the political spectrum or anywhere in between that they self-identify with. Okay, this is the part that I want to get to in the article. But like I say, you got to go way down the article before you get to this point, which most people will never even get close to that, right? But this is where they're talking about how he was against fascists. And I mean, I'm totally with Orwell in that aspect. We're all against fascists. I'm completely against any collective ideology. But here, he said, quote, "It's vital that we understand that his experiences in the Spanish Civil War informed his attitudes not only towards fascism, but Marxism and Stalinism too. We see traces of Franco's regime as well as Stalin and Hitler's in Orwell's later novels. While I chose to highlight Orwell's attitudes towards fascism in my thread, we must also understand that he came to resent all totalitarian governments, all collective governments, the very concept of the collective ideology, right? One can come to despise the extremes of both ends of the political spectrum simultaneously. It's not an either-or situation." He added, "I encourage Paul to widen his reading beyond the message boards and Facebook communities of the alt-right and develop a little nuance in his attitudes." But once again, even in this particular article, the original author, even though he tried to put forth and present, right? That's that clickbait thing, right? As if Orwell was somehow aligning somehow with Marxism against, fascism, alt-right that they call it today, right? Or really what you're talking about is National Socialism instead of globalism, is Orwell, in reality, the truth is, in this person is acknowledging that in this section, is Orwell was against any totalitarian regime. So global communism, globalism, socialism, fascism, and even democracy, right? Majority or mob rule. Orwell was all about respecting the individual because he was a product and educated and informed enough to understand the precedents set forth and presented by those of the Enlightenment era. That everything should be all about the individual. Because the minute you deny the rights and the respect of the individual, well, that's what the minute that the platform of totalitarianism or authoritarianism can take place and take hold, right? So whether it's from communists, socialists, fascists, Democrats, right? It's all about majority or mob rule for these people. The truly critical thinkers, the truly independent, the ones that truly adhere to and respect what liberty and freedom is all about are those that respect the individual and promote the individual. Because anyone can be painted into, I mean, I'm white and I'm a male, so in identity politics and collectivism, I could be painted with the same broad scope as people that may have the same skin pigmentation and be of the same sex, but be completely immoral, unethical fucking people, right? And violent oppressors. But because identity politics allows people to paint with that broad brush, I can be aligned automatically with someone that I would completely oppose based on nothing more than identity politics. Orwell himself was completely against identity politics. Orwell himself, if he were alive now, would tell you, no, he's all about the individual. But like I say, political opportunists, especially in a lot of the establishment media outlets, they want to just generate revenue, and they don't seem to care what the general population thinks. You know, they recognize instinctively that there are going to be some astute and intelligent people who read them. That's why stuff like this is written way down the middle of the article. But for the clickbait, for the ad revenue, to generate fervor or anger against someone that they perceive as their political opponents, this is the kind of stuff, this is the kind of message, this is the kind of narrative, this is the kind of headlines that we want to put forth and present. It's a shame. It's terrible. This is not what journalism was ever supposed to be about. And it sure as shit isn't going to be the kind of journalism that is going to help educate and inform the population properly, no matter what country you live in, Western or otherwise. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.